I called an electrician, and he reignited something I thought was gone. Have you ever felt like time flew by too fast, and you didn't even realize it? Like something essential was missing? Something that would make you feel alive again? My name is Emma. I'm 52 years old, and I live in Bennington, Vermont. Today, I want to share my story. It had been quiet in the house for too long. The walls had a voice, but it was an old, tired one, echoing nothing but the sound of my own footsteps. 3 years since Michael passed. 3 years of silent routines and nights that lasted far too long. I tried to keep busy with small home projects, changing the living room curtains, reorganizing books in the basement, planting flowers on the porch. But none of it filled the void in the heart of the house, right there where he used to leave his wet boots after snowstorms. Then, on a cloudy Tuesday in March, the kitchen outlets stopped working. I could have called someone from a website, but my neighbor across the street, Mrs. Wilson, gave me a local contact. Call Jack. He's great. Works alone, totally honest. And he's got magic hands, she said, with a cheeky little smile. I jotted his number down on the back of an envelope and called that afternoon. The voice on the other end was deep and calm. Good evening. Emma, right? I can stop by tomorrow morning. Yes, that works. Thank you, Jack. I hung up feeling something strange in my chest. As if a window, long sealed shut, had just cracked open a little. It felt like that voice wasn't just talking to me, it was speaking to my whole body. Jack showed up right at 9. He rang the bell, and when I opened the door, I had to take a moment to compose myself. Tall, broad-shouldered, with a neatly trimmed silver beard and strong hands gripping a black toolbox. He wore a gray flannel shirt, sleeves rolled up to the elbows, revealing arms marked by time and work. His dark brown eyes had that quiet depth, the kind that seemed to see right through you. Morning, Miss Emma. Everything all right? Yes, you can just call me Emma. Please come in. He smiled softly from one corner of his mouth, the kind of smile that doesn't try to impress but says more than enough. I showed him the faulty outlets, near the kitchen counter and behind the dining room sideboard. He got to work with precision, barely saying a word. The clicking of tools and hum of circuits being tested filled the house with a strangely comforting sound. I lingered nearby, pretending to rearrange some old teacups on the shelf, but really I was just watching him. This house is old, huh? He said, eyes still on the wires. Yeah, built in the 1940s. It creaks a lot, especially in winter. I like that. Gives it character. I let out a short laugh, surprised he'd said exactly what I always thought. He didn't speak much, but every word felt deliberate. You live here alone? He asked later. I do, since my husband passed away. I'm sorry to hear that. Thank you. The silence returned, but it wasn't heavy anymore. It felt shared. A silence that had presence. His whole body spoke of change without saying a word. While he worked on the living room wiring, I stood in the doorway, just watching. He was just a man doing his job. Yet there was something magnetic about him. Maybe it was the calm, focused way he handled every wire, and in that moment, I imagined him handling me with that same calm, slow, precise care. Or maybe it was how naturally he seemed to belong, as if he fit into the space without taking it over. Something in me quietly longed to keep him close. The wiring's not bad, but it's old. Whoever did this knew what they were doing back then, he said, connecting a terminal. That was probably my husband. He liked to fix things around the house. Even if he didn't really know how. Jack chuckled softly, still focused. Sounds familiar. My ex-wife used to say I thought I could fix anything with duct tape and good vibes. I laughed, a light, unexpected sound. The kind of laugh that slips out when sadness forgets to hold your chest tight. This house has a good vibe, though, he said after a pause. Some days I feel that too. Other days it feels like everything's out of place. Jack looked up, and for a moment, our eyes met. There was something in that gaze, steady, kind. Like he understood something I hadn't even said. Sometimes it's just a tripped breaker, Emma, and sometimes it's just... You, I said without thinking. He didn't respond, just nodded slowly. And in that silence, I felt a rare connection. It wasn't about words, it was about being present, whole, even if just for a breath of time. When Jack finished the work for the day, I stepped toward the kitchen door a bit shyly. "Would you like some coffee before you go?" "I'd love some, thanks." I made the coffee more carefully than usual. Used the blue ceramic mug I almost never took out, Michael's favorite. And for the first time, it didn't hurt. We sat out back on the porch, looking out over the small yard scattered with dry leaves. The sky was still overcast, but the air felt lighter, almost warm, like winter was starting to retreat. Jack held his cup with both hands, as if savoring the heat of the moment. I noticed that ... and smiled quietly to myself. "Have you always worked as an electrician?" I asked, more to hear his voice again than for the answer. He nodded, eyes on the trees. "Since my 20s. My dad taught me. He was old school, no gloves, no fear. I learned to respect the wires more than he ever did." Sounds like a man of his time. "Yeah, he used to say electricity's like a woman, powerful, beautiful, and unpredictable." I smiled at the metaphor. So did Jack. It was a soft, almost nostalgic smile. "What about you, Emma? What did you do before?" It took me a moment to answer. I used to teach literature in high school. Then I retired early to care for Michael when he got sick. Since then, I read, I clean, I try to keep the garden from falling apart. I try to remember who I was before I became the widow. Jack didn't say anything, just looked at me, firm, calm. But gaze with no pity, no rush, just presence. And in that moment, I realized silence didn't need to be filled. Because it already spoke, it said things words never could. CONTI nuo ... closing parenthesis, continuaco traducao. Jack came back on Saturday, just like he said he would. The sky was clear this time, and the late morning sun cast soft shadows on the polished wood floor. I was nervous. Didn't know why, but I changed clothes 3 times before settling on something simple. Dark jeans and a moss-green sweater that brought out my eyes. It wasn't vanity. It was the need to feel seen. When I heard his truck pull into the gravel driveway, my heart raced. The kind of rush you forget exists after 50. "Morning again," he said as he came in, smiling from the corner of his mouth. "Morning, Jack. Coffee first, work later?" He let out a short, genuine laugh. That sounds like a perfect deal. We made the coffee together, and for the first time, our arms touched while I reached for the sugar. A small touch, almost nothing. But my body responded like it had been hugged from the inside. We sat in the living room this time, holding warm mugs while soft music played from the old radio on the shelf. I don't usually drink coffee before noon, but with you. "It feels right," he said, looking at his cup like he was confessing something deeper. "I don't usually invite strange men into my house twice in the same week," I replied. This time I was the one who smiled first. The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet you share with someone you trust. And in that space between one sip and the next, he said something that unraveled me. "You know, Emma ... you carry your sadness with such elegance. Like someone who's made peace with it but still wears it like perfume." It took me a while to respond. Not because I didn't have words, but because no one had seen me like that in years. Maybe ever. I used to think it would go away, but now ... I just try to live around it. I've rearranged the furniture of my grief, I guess. Jack nodded slowly, as if he understood, not just the words, but the space between them. "That's beautiful and real." He stood to return to his work, but before he did, he placed his cup on the coffee table, looked me in the eyes, and said, "I'll finish what I came here to do, but I think there's more here than just broken wires, Emma." I stood frozen for a moment, feeling something shift deep inside, not like a memory, but like a beginning. And I realized that some connections aren't made of copper or voltage. They're made of presence, of listening, of true seeing. It was after 2 in the afternoon when Jack finished up in the laundry room. He washed his hands at the kitchen sink, dried them with an old dish towel, and leaned against the counter. I was sitting across from him, watching quietly. All done. "Everything's working now," he said, looking straight at me. "Thank you, Jack. Not just for the repairs. For what then?" he asked, his voice lower, rougher. For bringing light back to places I didn't even realize had gone dark. He stayed still, staring at me like he was waiting for permission. I gave it, not with words, but with my breath, my eyes, and the silence between us. He walked around the counter slowly, as if not to scare something delicate. He stopped in front of me and waited. "It's okay, Jack. I'm not afraid of this," I said, my voice a little shaky. He reached out and touched my face gently, and it made my heart ache. His touch was warm, steady, intentional, but unhurried. "You're beautiful, Emma. Not just your face, the way you talk, the way you allow yourself to be still." I forgot what it felt like to be seen like this, I whispered, leaning my forehead against his. His lips found mine like they already knew the way. The kiss was slow, deep, not hungry, but thirsty. Not for flesh, but for soul. I let go. I opened up. I unbuttoned my sweater and felt his hands explore my skin with care. He laid me down on the couch, with the afternoon sun painting golden patterns on my chest. "You feel like home, Emma," he murmured between kisses, caressing my stomach with reverent affection. "Then stay a while," I whispered, holding his neck. The movements were slow, respectful, and tense. Our bodies spoke more than our mouths. Interrupted breaths, hands exploring without shame, touches that lit up memories buried under layers of mourning. I trembled when he pulled me on top of him, and I felt not pain, not fear, but recognition. It was like something inside me said, "You're still alive." With every gesture, he gave me back pieces I thought I buried with Michael. But unlike what I feared, it didn't hurt. There was no guilt, only presence and surrender. Later, with my head resting on his chest, listening to his heartbeat, I said, "I didn't know I needed this." "Me neither. But I'm glad it happened." No rush, no pressure. Just this. Jack kissed the top of my head and every inch of me like he was discovering who I truly was, then held me like someone who understood the weight of what we'd just shared. It wasn't just sex. It was rescue. It was reconnection, and most of all, it was real. Jack stayed a while after it ended. He didn't say he had to go. He didn't say he wanted to stay. He just held me on the couch, in silence, one hand resting gently on my bare arm, like he knew stillness could carry love too. When he finally left that evening, the house felt different. Same walls, same lights, but everything seemed more alive. I went to my room and closed the door. I didn't cry. I just sat at the edge of the bed, hands on my thighs, eyes on the lamp that was off. What did it mean? Was it just a fleeting, beautiful moment? Or the beginning of something I couldn't yet name? My body still held his warmth, but my mind started spiraling. "You're 52, Emma. It was just a moment of loneliness. What if he doesn't come back?" I shook my head, trying to silence the critical voice inside me. But another, gentler one replied, "What if it's not about him coming back? What if it's about you coming back?" The next morning, I made coffee and sat on the porch. The sun was high. The sky was clear. But something in me still felt cloudy. I spent the day in silence, tending the garden, rearranging books I had no intention of reading. I was afraid everything would go back to the way it was, like that afternoon had just been a dream. But I knew it happened, and it stirred something I couldn't explain, but that felt wonderful. By late afternoon, the phone rang. It was him. "Hey, Emma." "Hey." Didn't want to just disappear. "I'm glad you didn't." "Can I see you again?" I paused before answering. "I think I need a little time to breathe." "Of course, no pressure." "I just ... wanted to hear your voice." That sentence warmed me. It was simple, human, real, and even without making a decision in that moment, I knew something inside me had already changed. Forever. The days that followed were quiet, but not empty. The house felt like it breathed differently, like the air had shifted. And so had I. It wasn't euphoria. It wasn't wild passion. It was something deeper, a kind of reconciliation with time, with my body, with the parts of me I thought had died. I started walking in the mornings. Easy trails through the park down the street. The one Michael and I used to take the dog to years ago, breathing in the cold air from the trees, feeling the ground beneath my feet, simple things that now carried weight. And presence, I started looking in the mirror with less urgency. I saw new lines on my face, some delicate, others deep. But for the first time, I didn't feel the need to erase them. Because now they told a story that finally made sense. My story. I got a message from Jack on a Wednesday. Just wanted to say I've been thinking of you. No pressure. Just a thought. I smiled, didn't reply right away. Let the message sit there like a flower left on the front step, beautiful on its own. No response required. That night, I took a long shower. Put on pajamas I liked, even with no one to see. Lit a candle in the bathroom. Read a few pages of Jane Eyre before bed. I wasn't waiting for him to complete me. I was learning to inhabit myself again. On a sunny Saturday, I went out to buy flowers. I ran into Jack in the grocery store parking lot, by chance, or maybe fate. Emma, Jack. We looked at each other for a few seconds. No tension, no script. He smiled, soft and easy. You look good, peaceful. I feel it. He offered to help with the bags. I politely declined. Maybe we can talk sometime? He asked. I'd like that, I said, genuinely. And we parted there with a simple touch of hands, like two adults who didn't need to cling to know there was something real, even if it was just a beautiful memory, or the start of a new story.